Hi everyone. Uh, I hope you all are having a great time at React Nexus. So thanks to Taneja for setting up a great base because my talk is all about MCP and Cursor is one of the biggest MCP client out there in the whole AI ecosystem. So this talk is about how you can give Cursor real superpowers. And when I say superpowers, we would like actually figure it out by the end of the talk. But before we actually begin, I would like to introduce myself. I am Apoorv. I work at Composio as a software engineer. Here my Twitter, and if you would like to connect, we can definitely do that. Right. What the heck is MCP? Right. You would have seen a lot of companies out there in the market and a lot of people on the internet talking about this whole MCP hype, and and everyone wants to try their hands on MCP and see what is it exactly, how they can use it, because all you see is like people having like improving their developer workflow or productivity whenever they use MCP, and it's just not limited to like a person who is technical. A lot of people from non-tech background also have been a fan of MCP. But what is MCP? So it is just an API wrapper. I'm just kidding. It's not an API wrapper. So MCP is like a standard way of giving context to LLMs. When I say a standard way, it's like a certain way LLMs can understand how to do things they are not capable of doing. So one of the best examples would be, let's say if you are using Claude, and if you go to Claude and say, can you send an email to xyz@xyz.com, and Claude would definitely won't be able to do that because it doesn't know how to send an email. It doesn't know who is the on which user's behalf I have to send an email. What is the sender body, right? So if you provided it a tool, and say the tool name is Gmail send email, it has all the functions that it needs to call when it has to send an email. It would then use that tool to use or maybe to send an email, because it can't do it on its own. It needs to get context of what exactly sending an email means. So and that's how like MCP comes into the picture. Think of MCP as like a collection of tools. So let's say if you want to do multiple things on top of Gmail, maybe send a draft, uh, uh, start a draft, send an email, list all the labels out there. You would have to put in every different tool, right? And MCP is like a bunch of tools out there. It's like an umbrella. It's like a different sort of tools. So all you have to do is just provide one URL and you get access to all the tools out there. So just put one URL in any of the MCP client and you have access to all the tools that are associated with the MCP. Now, MCP as a concept has like two main things. One is MCP client, which is Cursor, Claude, and WinServe, and that consumes the MCP server which people have built. The whole job of MCP client is just to make use of the tools that are present in MCP server. And MCP server is like the whole infra layer where all the tooling, all the tool logic is present, that has the actual real logic that tells what needs to be done when someone calls that tool. Right. So let's actually build an MCP server. And from this point of time, the talk is divided into two parts, where first would be like we'll be coding a simple MCP server and seeing what is it like to code an MCP server if no one has done it ever. And the second part would be to giving it like superpowers. And now let's actually go to our okay. Right. So this is like a boilerplate setup I have with just TypeScript files that get built. Nothing else there, right? This is the build folder. We don't need it. All right. So to build an MCP server, let me import an MCP class from Model Context Protocol. They provide an SDK. So I'll be obviously doing tab because I don't want to write all the code. But right, so that's how you can import an MCP server. And what you do is you write a function, right? And then you call this function, right? And inside this main function, I would be defining the MCP server. I would be initializing it. So I can do something like const server is equals to new MCP server, and I would give it a name and a version. Think of it's like an API version. So this is the name. And now this is where I have initialized my MCP server. The next part of this, once I initialize the MCP server, is how does this MCP server communicates, because that's the most important part. So MCP as a protocol supports 3 different ways of communication. One is standard input output, one is SSE, that is server side events, and the next one is HTTP streamable. But as I'm like doing things locally, I would definitely do standard input output because it's easy to set up. I don't have to maintain a server, run it, and then do SSE or HTTP streamable. So as we are using standard input output, I would import this transport method from the library, which is provided by Model Context Protocol. I'll initialize the transport method and I'll connect my server. And now this is how you can create a server, and it would be available via stdio method. This is all you have to do to initialize the server and make it available. Now if I go to cursor settings and if I like enable it, you would see that there is no tools present because we didn't specify any tools. We just created a server and did nothing else apart from that. Now the next job is to actually provide it some tools, right? We can like add a dummy tool maybe to see how would actually it look like. So to create a tool, all I have to do is server.tool, and this function accepts a few parameters. The first one is definitely the name of the tool. The next one is the description of the tool, and the third one is more like what needs to be sent in this tool when it is getting executed, and the last one is definitely what to do when this tool is getting executed, like what should it do in the end. So as cursor has suggested a few things, this is how I can create a tool. It's very simple. This last function which we are seeing is eventually that gets executed, right? This is how the tool would look like. Now I can go to cursor settings and I can just restart it. I think my server is not running. Okay, I have to build the code. Oops. All right. Right. And now I can see in the definition, I have one tool created, dummy tool. This is what I have created. And let's actually use this tool. So if I go here and say, can you call the dummy tool? Why is it taking so much time? All right, so it called the dummy tool. It says no, CB is not a callback function. Oh, okay. Oh, I need to give the tool annotations. All right. Now I'll just stop it. I'll go to cursor settings again. I'll do this again. It is quite slow. I'm not sure why, but okay, let's just let it happen, and we can continue with the talk. So this is how you define the tool. But now let's say you want to send an email. So what this tool definition would look like. So your tool name would probably be Gmail, send an email, and it would be like a description of the tool, what it should do, and it would have the parameters like the receiver's email, the body it needs to have, the attachments if it has any, right? And the next last would be the function that it should call, like it would be a Gmail API eventually that it needs to call to send an email. So this is what a tool definition would look like for a tool that you need to send an email, and that would you would probably provide that in Claude. Okay, this ran actually. So as we can see, it resulted in dummy tool, and this is what we had provided the result as. So this is how it's easy to call an MCP tool once you create it. But now let's talk about the superpass part. Now this was a very simple tool which we had created. Now imagine doing something like sending an email from an MCP server. That is fine. You just create a Gmail server tool and it would do it. Now if you want to, let's say, create a ticket on Linear, there's one more server tool for that. You want to send a message on Slack, that's again a one more tool. But how long would it take for you to write all the tools out there and make it functional and make sure the authentication works, it has the right access to all the auth tokens. It is able to connect to your account and able to execute an action, right? And as a developer, you can't afford writing the tools for all the applications out there. So that's where the superpower comes in, where all you have to do is, so I am using a tool from Composio. These are the 5 tools that you need to actually call any of the application tools out there. So as you can see, these tool definitions, these tool strings are like pretty much self-explanatory. So they help you in checking the active connection. Let's say if you want to execute something for Gmail, they actually check if you have like an active connection. The second one is like to initiate a connection if you're not connected. And third one is basically to figure out what parameters you need to execute an action. And compose your search action is where the whole magic happens, where it searches the relevant set of actions you need to perform, or the tool needs to perform, to make sure it accomplishes whatever you have asked for. And then tool execute action is where it literally calls the execute tool to something. Now, if I go to the whole code, and if I just delete this, and I'll actually set up the MCP server file, which I have. In this file, all I'm doing is I'm calling this composio.tools to get the tools, and the tool would definitely would have the same function or definition as we saw there. So it would have the name of the tool, the description of the tool, the parameters it accepts, and the execution call it needs to do when it executes. The definition of tool is exactly same. It has nothing else, nothing different. It's the same which we wrote here. So now I'm just looping over the tools, and I'm doing the same thing which I did, server.tools, and I'm passing the tool name, description, the tool schema, and what it actually needs to do. Now this is how where I actually set up the whole thing. Now I just go to server, I just disable it and enable it. Now you would see I have 5 tools enabled, and let's actually do something now. So if I say, can you send an email to I didn't even mention like I have to use a Gmail tool. I didn't mention the tool definition for Gmail or anything of that sort. All I have to do is just mention in natural language like what I want it to do. So it would actually call this search action function, where it figures out my use case and the available apps, right? And now it figures out that, okay, I have to use this Gmail send email tool to send an email. It checks if I have an active connection. Yes, I do have an active connection. And oops, it doesn't have an active connection. Interesting. Okay. It is calling this function. It's quite slow. I didn't expect to do it this slow. Right, now if I go over to my Gmail, and if I see perfectly right, I received an email, right? And let's say I want to do something on linear. So if I do, can you create a ticket on, or maybe let me send a Slack message. Can you send a message on Slack on random channel saying hi? I know the talk is like a bit extended. I'm really sorry for that. But yeah, this is the last, I think, piece of demo I wanted to show. So it just searches for an action where it says search message. It figures out, and it figures out which app it needs to do. And now it exactly figures out the right set of action it needs to call, which is Slack send a message to the Slack channel. And now it is checks if I have an active connection to the Slack tool out there. And I do have an active connection. Let's just wait for it to get executed. I think it's quite slow. This is interesting. Okay, now it is executing the action with the action name. It has figured it out earlier, and now we should be able to see the action in some time. Right, it has sent a Slack message at 5:12 p.m. saying hi. So I didn't even mention any of the tools out there. All I had to do is write in literal English that what it needs to do, and it did everything. So I had like more demos, but I think due to time constraint, I would not be able to show it. But yeah, if you want to check out MCP, you can definitely check out all the tool definitions that are available on Composio. And MCP docs is definitely a great source if you're building it for the first time. And that's all. Thank you so much.